exploring the investment landscape with a guru's wisdom and a strategist's insight. Good Life Companies presents The Market Enthusiast with Noah Brooks and Chris Needs.
Welcome back to another installment of The Market Enthusiast. I'm Noah Brooks, and with me, Chris Needs.
Hello, hello.
So, did anything happen since the last time we were here?
We got our answer on the election.
Oh, what was it?
We got a Trump victory.
Trump?
It's actually pretty decisive. We knew basically the night of or morning after.
Did the market respond at all?
We saw a big day. Small caps were up 5 to 6%. I think we ended up just below 3% on S&P and NASDAQ. So, yep, we had a big reaction.
So the market apparently liked the Trump win. Not apparently. The market liked the Trump win. There's no question about it. I'm not sure that the market would have went down had Harris won, but maybe just more of a muted reaction to anything. We woke up on Wednesday morning, the futures were up. The Dow futures were up 1,000 points. S&P, was up 3.5% pre-market, and then I think it closed at the high of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen there's those reaction functions that the big firms put out, and Goldman had one where they had, red sweep, red divided, what have you. And the highest scenario was up 3% for a red sweep. And it was remarkable. It was pretty darn close to up 3% at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think they had it ranging from like up 3 to down 0.5% as you went down the reaction function. But yeah, it was surprising to have the result the first day. I think that's another reason why the market responded so favorably. We didn't have like a recount sort of hanging over us or lawsuits.
I had said it was kind of like a knife's edge. You didn't know where it was going to be, right? It was so close. But in the end, it did not turn out to be that close. And out of the battle zone states, which we're one of, and I have to say, I am so thankful for this to be over. I mean, every ad on the radio and on the nightly news or just in television in general, broadcast television, was an ad. It didn't matter. There would be 4 or 5 ads back and forth in a row. I'm ecstatic that that's over. The only way
I've become significantly less popular. My phone stopped blowing up since the election.
I had
anymore.
Donald Trump text me like 3 times in one day. I had Governor Walz text me a few times in one day.
I got on some Colin Allred from Texas. I got on one of his distribution lists.
How do you get on one of those things?
I don't know.
Guy from Texas. The only way that I'm going to listen to more of these is I know it's going to happen. We're going to be DVRing, watching something from DVR, and it's going to be a freaking commercial for a president.
Ooh, painful flashback.
Yeah. But I use the DVR to avoid those commercials. So just jump between things. Having said that, I started by saying the election was on a knife's edge. But out of the 7 battleground states, do you know how many Harris won?
0.
Goose egg.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
It got close in Wisconsin, but pretty much everywhere else was more than 1%.
How are the polls that off?
I don't know. They had talked. They had pollsters said they had accounted for the quote unquote shy Trump vote, like people maybe unwilling to say they support Trump, but clearly they didn't figure it out. I mean, you had that Des Moines Register poll that said like 2-3 days, I think it was like the Thursday before the election, that Iowa was going to vote for Harris by a couple percent.
Yeah.
And that they ended up being wrong by like 16% or something.
Well, listen, for all our listeners out there, I mean, whether your preferred candidate won or lost, I hope you didn't make any investment decisions because of the election, right? So here we are, mid-November. The S&P 500 is up 27% for the year. The Dow's up dramatically. We closed at over 6,000 on the S&P 500. It's so important not to invest emotionally. And I think, this time, just like 2020 and 2016, I think there were people that were, investing for their political beliefs. And I'm all for political beliefs, like have it, love it, whatever you need to do there. But from the investment standpoint, you shouldn't bet against America, and certainly not against the S&P 500 these days. There's going to be another time when the market goes down. There's no question that will happen again. But from a political standpoint, you just can't invest emotionally. It doesn't
The
work.
market does what it does, and I said this to my family is, so yes, we've seen the market jump since the election, but it doesn't change. Sure, some policies will have some effects here and there on the margins, what have you, but it doesn't change the economy. It doesn't change the dynamics. There's a finger on the scale in certain directions with different policies, but we are still headed towards a little bit of a slowdown. So 3 of the last 4 months in jobs have been poor numbers. We had one amazing number that got sort of dialed back a little bit, but our last jobs number was 12,000 jobs added. And then they revised down between August and September 112,000.
Well, so for everybody listening, the 12,000 jobs is a very low number. It's speculated that number is so low because of the storms, right? We had Milton and then the other name storm, Helene. And, it's tough to add workers across the board in the United States when you have whole swaths of the country that are underwater.
Yeah.
And the electric's down and telecom systems are down, right? So I think this next month coming up, every month is important, but certainly after you see a jobs report that goes from 100,000 to 12,000, like you want to see that back up. I mean, you want to see it back up to a level that is appropriate.
Hopefully we'll see a reversion to the mean and maybe a revision upwards. Maybe there's a delay in counting because of those storms as well. We know what happened in North and South Carolina, and we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, so without going down a rabbit hole of politics, let's try to talk a little bit about policy and about why the market reacted the way it did. Because we read a lot around here. There's some interesting policies that would drive the market forward that have been proposed by the Trump administration. And then there's some policies that don't seem like they would be positive in the economy. That really is, there's a dichotomy there. So when you think about taxes, right? And this is an economic conversation. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on other morality clauses and things like that. That's not what we're here to discuss. But from a tax standpoint, lowering taxes probably good for the profitability of companies.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think we still have a little bit of detail to find out about it, but we're at 21% now. At the very least, it was extending the Trump Tax and Jobs Act
from 17.
Yeah. And then I guess there's another low-hanging fruit of 15% for corporations that manufacture here.
Yeah.
So those are certainly beneficial, and that tax cut is a little dangled, we'll say a carrot for people to say, yeah, we understand your labor is going to be higher here, but this will help make up for some of that.
Yeah. Let's talk. So we have a positive for the markets. What about tariffs? Tariffs do not seem like they would be positive for the markets.
Yeah, so that is obviously a unilateral one-time bump up, a significant bump up. If you're looking at goods from China, 60% is the number that's floating out there now. That would be, any goods or inputs we're getting from China, that'd be a one-time 60% increase in the cost of those inputs. If it's fully inelastic, if they wouldn't eat some of the price difference of the tariffs, but that would definitely be a tough one to swallow there. And what's the other number? Is it 20% on other countries?
Yeah, for anybody. That's what I've heard. So we have tariffs on the one hand that don't seem very good. We have lower tape on the other hand that lower
deregulation,
tape, right?
Deregulation for, say, financials and energy is probably a big plus.
The lower red tape, the less regulation, and again, there's too much deregulation, right? I don't want to be drinking methane in my water. I don't think anybody else out there wants to have chemicals in their water, but there are obvious ways that we can deregulate instead of taking 5 years to build a factory and get it up and running. Maybe it only needs to take 9 months. With policy and permitting and all of those items, they seem to be pretty slow these days. But wouldn't that require maybe more government?
Yeah, potentially. I think of something I saw on
get
the
it through
internet one
faster?
time. Yeah, I think of there was some like landslide in Japan, and it took out a road on the very like edge of a mountain, and like it was like within like 72 hours they had like basically a working workaround, and then within 2 weeks they had the whole road rebuilt. And then I see like from Hurricane Helene, there's the roads in I think Western North Carolina where it's saying that highway is going to be out of commission until September of 2025. There's no reason in America it should take that long to rebuild a highway. I understand there's bridges and things like that,
Yeah, of course.
where there is.
Do you know that to be a permitting issue?
I do not know if it's a permitting issue, but it seems like they're probably waiting on payouts from the government. People don't do things up front, like they don't do the work and know they're going to get paid afterwards when they're dealing with the government.
Well, here in Pennsylvania, we had the bridge fire on I-95. It took out that bridge. It stopped I-95. And I think in a matter of 3 weeks, the bridge was completely rebuilt. I mean, that was a testament to everybody working together and just saying we need to get this done because it's a major artery.
Yeah.
I don't know how it could be so long for those other things to take hold.
Where are we at on the Baltimore bridge?
Oh, the bridge?
Yeah, I don't know.
Out of sight, out of mind on that thing for me.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was big news for about 2 weeks, and I don't know. I know that ships are going in and out of the harbor.
Yeah, they got cleared out.
They got cleared out, but I don't know
Nothing
exactly
on the bridge yet.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a couple years. I remember them quoting. So
isn't that the bridge that goes to the what's the big bridge from Virginia? The Chesapeake Bay Bridge.
Yeah.
Isn't that somehow connected, or am I completely off on that one?
I'm not sure.
All right, my fault. So go back to the pros and cons here, and then we have reduced regulation, which seems pretty positive for the markets. And if you're an industrial manufacturer and you want to get up and running, that seems pretty positive for you. But then the big one, which is immigration. If they're serious about taking out a large population of workers from the economy, that to me seems highly inflationary, right? Wage inflation. You're talking.
We already have wages that are above CPI, even core CPI. But yes, that would definitely be wage inflationary, you'd think, which is good for workers who remain, I guess, but it's
great for workers.
Terrible for businesses and companies.
Yeah. And so to me, I just, you look at both sides of the policies that have been espoused by the incoming administration. And some of them seem, reasonable. And again, I'm talking economic policies here. Some of them seem reasonable for the market to bump up, lower taxes, less regulation. And then others like the immigration situation and the tariffs, they just don't seem positive to me. And it's not a situation where they don't seem positive in 6 months or 9 months. They don't seem positive like on day one when they implement it. Now, I mentioned
what's big for me is timing of it. If I feel like they have to wait until they have progress on getting the potential tax cuts down and then sort of do them in tandem, because if they just do tariffs day one, it's going to take a year plus to get these tax cuts in. That doesn't happen overnight. They have to draft all the bills and do the reconciliations, make sure things add up. And if they just go day one and do tariffs and then it's a year plus until we get cuts on taxes, that's going to be tough on the economy. I think they need to do them at the same time or wait to do tariffs until we have true.
I think it's you said the timing of it, right? If it's implemented incrementally on certain aspects here, I think that would be reasonable. And I'm not in the camp that we need to remove 12 million people from the country. I am in the camp that if there are people here illegally that are criminals, especially violent criminals. I mean, you know, I don't have any issue with that. And I don't really want to go down this path.
We don't like any criminals. It's not necessarily, it's
well,
just,
hey,
yeah.
there's a few legal criminals here, that are here legally that I wouldn't mind seeing leaving as well if they want to take those people with them. But going back to what I started with here is that I know people, there's half the country out there that did not have their preferred candidate win, right? And it is close, even though from an electoral college standpoint, it's not that close. From a population standpoint, it is. And I want the half that is not in love with this particular candidate right now, just, don't invest emotionally. Don't move your money around because you're currently not feeling good about the situation. It is okay to not feel good about the situation, but I wouldn't suggest investing because of it or changing your investment style because of who won the election. I think
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that's
And
a
wise.
summary. I hope it's wise. I hope that's the case, but I tend to believe that. And same for 2020 and 2016, and certainly 2008 or 2009. I mean, you don't change. There are certain items to change. Certainly the outlook for clean energy may not be as brilliant as it was, a month ago today. I mean, there's certainly aspects of that scenario that aren't going to be the same thing. Medical marijuana is probably, although I don't know, he seemed at the end they were just throwing stuff up at the wall, right?
Like, whatever will get an extra 10,000 voters.
No taxes on tips,
Social Security,
legalized pot. It was everything at the end, right?
Yeah.
So it really just depends on what they're going to do, which policies they're actually going to implement. I know, what we're starting to see is the creation of the cabinet. And a lot of the people that are being selected for the cabinet or being proposed are China hawks.
Yeah.
So
Lighthizer definitely is one of the biggest out there. He's written books. He was a lawyer basically dealing with corporations, dealing with trade with China. So definitely a lot of China hawks.
How does that play into Taiwan?
I think it's just a tougher stance, maybe. But again, I don't know. We've heard conflicting things on Ukraine, so maybe less steadfast support for them, at least financially. Maybe not in terms of spirit, but in terms of financially supporting. If that holds the same, I mean, I think Taiwan would need us financially. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, there's still some time for that to be answered, but it is probably something that's going to rear its head here. And just to touch base on the ESG situation, we have this scenario that's setting up that I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle with clean energy, right? I mean, that no one's going to get rid of the clean energy infrastructure that we have. It's proven, and the cost per megawatt has continued to come down, while the storage costs have continued also to come down. And again, you're not going to put the genie back in the bottle. But if other countries throughout the world, including China, are going to continue to advance clean energy, I mean, if in 4 years we haven't done anything, or if there's been a dramatic slowdown here in the US, the rest of the world is likely to have bypassed us or went around us on solar and wind and possibly other clean energy stuff.
There's just a geopolitical football, though, that has to do with those things. I think everybody understands clean energy is good and will be utilized in the long term. But right now, China has such a stranglehold on the resources. I think they process I think the last number I saw was 98% of photovoltaic solar wafers, meaning, solar panels require, the wafers to harness the energy and then pass it into the battery. 98%? That's insane. That's tough. I don't know how we let them get such a stranglehold on that. I know it probably has a lot to do with their investment in Africa, where there's a lot of natural resources, where they just basically gave them debt deals and then said, but if you default on this, your country's ours, basically. That's essentially
But
how they were
probably
written.
also has something to do with the oil lobby. Now, don't come for
Well,
me,
that too.
everybody, right? Like, don't come for me on this one. But probably has something to do with the hydrocarbon lobbies.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like with sort of the protectionist stance that's going to happen, it's going to really make it tough for clean energy and solar. And I wish maybe we planned ahead a little bit better and we had better control on certain resources, because we don't want to lose a resource battle. So if China is truly our biggest geopolitical foe and they have the next generation's resources all locked up, that puts us at a disadvantage. Even if our economy is better, which it is right now, and our military is better, if they have all the resources over time, I feel like it's a little bit of a stranglehold.
yeah, no question about it. And they're the leader in the rare earth minerals, right? And elements. There was a big mine in California that was opened in the 90s, or maybe reopened in the 90s, and then closed when those prices went down pretty dramatically. I think it's Mammoth, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on the name. But I suspect that we have these rare earths here in the United States, and we just haven't committed the dollars and cents to actually extracting them like we have for hydrocarbons. It's not like it's not like China's the only spot in the world that has these rare earth minerals.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, a lot of them, sort of like I said with Africa, a lot of them are coming from Africa. The problem is they've locked up and put the money down, that basically they get the resources from there and then they process them in China. It's not that they're all below the ground in China per se.
Yeah.
They've just locked up the rights to them.
Maybe it's time to start mining the asteroids.
I like it. Elon.
Right? Oh, Elon. Well, let's talk about Elon for a second here.
I have the Elon stat we were talking about the other day. He put up $120 million towards a super PAC, and I checked last night. I reran the numbers based on Tesla's increase in price, which has been, we'll call it a rocket ship, not to bring SpaceX into this, but his net worth is up $50 billion since the election now, as of last night's.
50 billion.
Yeah, I think Tesla's down a little bit today, but as of yesterday, $50 billion on a, we'll call it $120 million investment.
The ROI there is really good.
Very good.
I don't feel settled about that, though. Like, that doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy that one person's wealth can have such a major, and I don't know how much of an impact it had. You could make a case that it was pretty big, especially at the end in the last 6 weeks. But it doesn't make me feel good that one person that's not the candidate can have such an impact on the election. It makes me a little queasy, as a matter of fact.
I've heard that sentiment from a lot of people.
Have you?
Especially with the stats after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you're saying, well, listen, I know that if I do this, my reward is going to be X, and it doesn't matter. It's moving the needle in a way that doesn't seem legit.
It's incentivizing less than ideal behavior for future elections.
Yeah. It just makes
amongst
you think,
the dark money or big money.
No, it just makes you think the people with the money control the election. And that's not a great thing to have happen.
Not to confuse with the cryptocurrency, but
the
Doge Department of Governmental Efficiency, he's apparently going to have a hand in.
Doge Department of Efficiency?
Yeah, they're going to try and cut out $2 trillion. They're just going to cut government. Like, what's his name? Malay down in Argentina just cut the government.
I don't think $2 trillion is realistic. And here's why. If I'm not mistaken, the entire budget for the U.S. government, not like spending in the United States, but the budget to run the government is about $2 trillion. I don't know how you're going to take $2 trillion out it unless you're just going to get rid of everybody in the government.
I don't recall the numbers, but yeah, discretionary spending was, I think, below $1 trillion. And by nature, you can only cut discretionary, right? I don't know. Hey, we'll see if Elon has a way to do it. And if it hopefully doesn't crumble our governmental institutions.
Hopefully.
Some people might hope that it does. I don't know.
Not this podcaster. Yeah, I don't think that would be great. I will put a little advert in for the government. I think the government does a lot of things positive for the American people. And I mean, a little bit of reform goes a long way, but I don't think we should gut the government. Right? Anyway, so what else happened last week? Anything interesting?
The Fed cut 25 basis points.
Yeah.
This decision was unanimous after September's wasn't.
Yeah.
Powell was asked directly his relationship with Trump, if he'll step down if asked. He said no.
Yeah.
They asked him again, well, what if he asked you to step down? Would you? Or he said no. And they said, what if he tells you? He said, not permitted by law.
Yeah.
So he's very emphatic. I don't
Seems
care.
like that's getting set up for a fight that goes to the courts. I mean,
he's until 2026.
Yeah.
So I don't think he'll go to the courts. I think it's a done deal. I don't think he can mess with them.
Yeah.
He can elect people that he doesn't like to the board, I guess, nominate people to the board, but I think Jay Powell's in there for 2 more years.
Yeah, it seems likely to me. So they did lower 25 basis points last week. That they operate in a range. So now they're at 450 to 475 for the overnight lending rate. And I don't know exactly what happened with the 10-year, but in earnest, since they started lowering the short end of the curve, long end, the 10-year and the 30-year have actually gone up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems kind of counterintuitive. We kind of mentioned this since the first time they lowered by 50 basis points. But it does seem counterintuitive. And I've heard all sorts of rationale on why that was. It's bond vigilantes. It is the fear that...
I love when that comes out.
Yeah, you like that? It's the fear that... some of the Trump policies are going to actually increase inflation and increase the national debt. It seems likely that they're not going to be able to cut the debt.
I definitely think it's that we're going to have ballooning deficits and less funding in terms of lower taxes. So your term premiums increasing due to the risk premium, I guess.
Yeah.
And then higher potentially. I mean, long term, it's generally the growth and the inflation expectations that move the long end. So I think based on the policies, higher growth and higher inflation, we'll see the long end go up a little bit.
I also heard this was something that was floated around over the last week or two, that because of the Trump administration policies that are going to be in place, EM is going to need to juice their markets, right? Emerging markets are going to need to add liquidity and stimulus to their economies. And in order to do that, they need to sell treasuries, which would have that same effect, as the bond and vigilante side of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's certainly that possibility out there. But the fact of the matter is that rates are going up, even though the Fed is lowering the short-term rate. And it would be great if they're going up because of growth. But I don't know that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like inflation is, at the moment, it's in check, it's in place. Prices are still high, and that's probably one of the reasons that Harris lost the election. I don't think the Democratic Party really gave as much credence to how hard it is for middle class and for lower middle class, and certainly the people below that to feed a family or to put gas in their car, or whatever it happens to be.
Bernie Sanders came out and noted on that. He said basically the Democrats came in and ate your lunch. You used to be the party of the working man, and now, whether truly or by swindling, now people were convinced that that's not the case, and that Republicans took those working class.
And I think I'm not the one to analyze this or to debrief it, but I think they missed the boat on how much people are concerned about immigration. And that's not a U.S. thing. When I travel and I talk to other people in parts of the world, I don't do any Southeast Asia, but Europe, they're thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. And I mean, you see by the results of the election that those are the things that people are concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other stuff, not that it doesn't matter, it certainly matters, but those are the things that move voters to the polls. They really are right at the moment.
Yeah, there's probably 30-40% of people are voting their way no matter what. based on whatever policy points they vote for. And then it's the mill ones you fought for. And I guess you're right. Maybe they didn't communicate the best on sort of those middle issues that swayed more people than,
Immigration and prices.
Yeah.
That's what won this election. There's no question about it. So
and you know what? It's been a thing over all of sort of developed, or we'll say Western civilization, where all the incumbents have been getting voted out because inflation was a global phenomenon. It's not like we're the only country that experienced it. You look at Europe, they had a ton of incumbents voted out as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, inflation is cumulative, right? I mean, unless you're having high inflation and then it's going negative, it means all of those price increases are there to stay. And there's always like some one-offs that go back down. But I mean, I think that was misjudged how hard it hit people.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. What else do we have? Anything for the good of the order here?
Let's run through the Dow information.
Okay.
So we had NVIDIA and Sherwin-Williams added on Friday the 8th to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and NVIDIA became the 22nd largest because it is a price-weighted index, meaning literally their share price determines their weight.
Yep.
Sherwin-Williams will be the 6th largest in the Dow, and they're replacing Intel, which we have some stats here we're going to go into. Really had a rough go of it this year and longer term. And then also Dow got booted out, removed from the index. But we have some interesting stats.
All right,
here.
let's go through it.
We'll call it maybe Dow Jones board of investment teams isn't the best stock pickers.
Yeah, no.
We'll say
it doesn't seem like it, huh?
All right, I'm literally reading off stat sheet here. All right, we'll go back to 1999. They deleted Chevron and added Intel. Since then,
that must have been a big winner.
Well, Intel is down 31% in the 25 years since it's been added. Chevron is up 243%.
Yeah.
All right. So the next group, all right, they added AIG and they removed International Paper. AIG is down 94% since inclusion in 2004. International Paper is up 44%. They added Bank of America in February of 2008. They're up 6% since that time. They removed Altria, who's up 140%. Now, here's one winner. They did add Apple in March of 2015, who's up 607%.
Okay.
Next, they added Walgreens and deleted General Electric. Walgreens down 86%, while in the Dow, General Electric, since being removed, up 170%. And here's the last group for you, so I don't bore you guys to death here, but they deleted Exxon and Raytheon and added Salesforce and Honeywell. Salesforce, since being added, up 18%. Honeywell up 33% since being deleted out. ExxonMobil up 203%. Raytheon is up 103%.
So what you're saying here is that this particular group of people that add stocks to the Dow Jones tend to have a pretty crappy track record.
I don't think they take into account cycles. They're just like, this stock's been doing great, let's buy it, and they're buying it at the peak of a cycle.
So then I'm gonna be a party pooper here, right? So what did they add on Friday?
They added NVIDIA and Sherwin-Williams.
So can we infer anything out of this other than these guys are terrible pickers and they only have a few winners that add to that? I mean, is there an investment thesis to be had regarding their inclusion in the Dow Jones?
I wouldn't recommend anybody make their decisions based purely on an inclusion to an indice. Obviously, you can have short-term catalysts, we'll say, to flows, but I'm not souring on NVIDIA. I'm hoping this is more of an Apple moment. And we see NVIDIA perform like Apple because there's a long runway on AI yet, and they are the only party in town for super high performance.
Yeah. There's no question productivity growth in the next decade is going to be from artificial intelligence. And NVIDIA is leading the way on it. But based on the stats that you just read,
based on the probabilities of what we just went through, I don't know, they might be be like a salmon swimming upstream a little bit. It might have a little resistance, but I'm not going to sour on them yet.
Okay. All right. Well, you heard it here first, everybody. So, in summary, right? Don't bet against America. Don't invest emotionally. For the market enthusiasts, I'm Noah Brooks. With me is Chris Needs. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly.